You know, I was thinking about this the other day. Why does the sunrise, which is, fundamentally just a massive ball of burning gas following this strict, unfeeling schedule,
Yeah.
why does that somehow make us feel less stressed than, say, looking at a single text message from a coworker?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we are biologically wired to crave that grand, predictable rhythm, right? But instead, we spend like 90% of our waking hours immersed in this digital and urban ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's meticulously designed to be unpredictable. It's demanding. It's frantic. I mean, we really do live in an era defined by a constant low-level panic.
Completely.
You know, we're surrounded by concrete, constantly managing these notifications, and we just feel entirely detached from the actual physical world.
Right. And the standard advice for that specific brand of modern panic is almost always some variation of packing your bags and fleeing to a remote cabin for a week.
The digital detox, yeah.
Exactly,
Right.
the digital detox, which sounds wonderful if you happen to have, unlimited vacation time and a massive disposable income.
Right, which most of us don't.
Yeah, it's terrible, impractical advice for the rest of us. So, that actually brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are exploring the philosophy of a creator named Osman, who goes by the Blind Muslim Yogi.
Mm-hmm.
And his entire approach focuses on tapping into the healing mechanics of nature without ever having to leave a dense, polluted, noisy city.
Yeah, and what really stands out about Osman's framework is his complete rejection of the idea that nature is a destination, like somewhere you have to travel to.
Right.
He treats the natural world as an ever-present baseline of pure energy. So the challenge isn't packing up a car to go find it. The challenge is shifting your cognitive lens to actually notice the consistency that's already operating underneath all that overwhelming noise of urban life.
I love that. And to understand how that cognitive shift actually works, we first have to look at what Osman diagnoses as the root cause of our modern anxiety.
All right.
Because when we're trapped in these environments entirely constructed by humans, surrounded by walls, staring at screens, sitting in traffic, our mental and visual horizons physically shrink.
They really do.
Our perspective just turns inward and we start looking at everything microscopically.
Yeah, he actually uses the term micromanaging to describe how we handle our own lives in these environments.
Oh, interesting.
Because when your horizon is only a few feet away, right, like a delayed train or a slightly rude email, suddenly occupies your entire field of vision.
Yeah, it becomes everything.
Exactly. You take a minor inconvenience and you magnify it until it feels like this insurmountable, life-altering crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this because it reminds me of having a single dead pixel on a computer monitor.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You stare at that one tiny black dot for so long that you literally convince yourself the entire display is ruined. You completely ignore the millions of perfectly functioning pixels surrounding it, and you hyper-focus on the flaw until you genuinely believe you've got the biggest problem in the world.
That is exactly it. And the antidote Osman prescribes for that dead pixel hyperfixation is simply observing the sheer function of the natural world. He emphasizes this concept of duty. Yeah, duty. Nature operates with this relentless, synchronous duty that is completely indifferent to our human dramas.
Yeah.
And he points to the sunrise as the ultimate demonstration of this.
Right.
If the sun is scheduled to crest the horizon at 6:13 a.m., it will appear at exactly 6:13 a.m.
It doesn't snooze its alarm.
No, it doesn't negotiate, it doesn't hit the snooze button, and it is never, ever running late.
See, he frames that astronomical fact with a thought experiment that genuinely stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, the bad day concept.
Yes.
Yeah.
He asks if the sun ever has a bad day because we naturally assume our human consciousness is the center of the universe simply because it's all we experience, right?
That's right.
And he equates our arrogance to ants on a sidewalk. Like an ant probably thinks it is the absolute pinnacle of existence, and it just views humans as some incomprehensible, chaotic shadow passing over its colony.
Yeah, and we very well might be the ants in this dynamic. But we just assume we are the ultimate intelligent entities because, we can build skyscrapers and analyze data. But whether the sun possesses some incomprehensible form of consciousness or not, it performs its rotation. It does its orbit.
Year after year.
Decade after decade, eon after eon, it just shows up and does its duty.
And seeing that consistency firsthand physically pulls you out of your own microscopic problems.
Oh.
It provides this very tangible reminder that there is a massive, stable system functioning perfectly outside of whatever localized crisis you think you're managing.
It shrinks that dead pixel back down to its actual size.
Exactly. But Osman goes beyond just the psychological comfort of that realization, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He dives deep into what he called the yoga science perspective.
I wanted to ask about this. Why does human society drain us while nature actually heals us?
Well, this framework explains the actual mechanics of why being immersed in human society drains our batteries, and why being around, say, trees, animals, or even natural light feels profoundly restorative.
And this involves the concept of energy auras, right? Which, I have to be honest, can sometimes sound a bit esoteric to some people.
It definitely can, but we can actually look at it through both a spiritual and a neurological lens. So in Osman's framework, every living thing emits an energetic frequency based on its internal state.
Okay.
The core issue with densely populated urban areas is that the vast majority of people are operating in what we call a high beta state.
Let's define that, because beta state gets thrown around frequently in wellness culture, but maybe not everyone knows what it means.
Sure.
We're talking about brainwave frequencies, right? Beta waves are what your brain produces when you are engaged in active, anxious, or highly alert thinking. It's basically the frequency of stress, calculation, and survival.
Exactly. So imagine an entire city of millions of people stuck in that high alert beta state.
Just buzzing with it.
Right. Everyone worrying about inflation, stressing over work deadlines, dwelling on past regrets, bracing for the future. That creates a collective ambient tension. In the yoga science view, you are physically walking through an overlapping web of high-stress frequencies. It's an environment that is literally vibrating with frustration and negativity.
And then you add the tangible realities of urban living on top of that. Exhaust fumes, noise pollution.
Yeah, and the atmosphere just becomes incredibly taxing on the human nervous system.
But plants and animals, they simply do not produce those frequencies. I mean, a tree doesn't experience existential dread about whether it's growing fast enough compared to the tree next door.
Exactly. They exist entirely by instinct and in the present moment. Their energetic output is completely devoid of human neurosis.
Right.
Because they aren't ruminating on the past or projecting anxiety into the future, the energy they emit is pure, cool, and calm. Tapping into a natural environment provides an immediate, striking contrast to the ambient anxiety of human society.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. I have to play devil's advocate and push back slightly on the idea of nature being universally cool, calm, and collected.
Okay, fair enough.
Because that sounds incredibly romanticized to me. If I find myself standing in front of a hungry bear or a pack of wolves, the energy in the air is not going to feel cool or calm. The animal kingdom is notoriously brutal, violent, and stressful.
That is a great point, and Osman addresses that exact contradiction with an experience from his own life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Originally from South Africa, he describes going on a game drive in an open vehicle.
Wait, open vehicle?
Yeah, we're talking about a Jeep with no windows and no roof, driving out into the bush specifically to observe wild lions.
Being in an open vehicle mere feet away from an apex predator sounds like an incredibly efficient way to induce a massive panic attack.
Well, his initial reaction was profound skepticism, too. I mean, he couldn't fathom why a lion wouldn't simply pluck a tourist out of the back seat for an effortless meal.
Seriously, why wouldn't they?
But the wildlife guide explained the fundamental mechanics of animal instinct. The lions they were observing were well fed. An apex predator in the wild only expends the energy to hunt when it actively requires sustenance.
That still feels like a monumental leap of faith for a tourist, honestly, trusting the current appetite of a wild predator.
It does, but observing them over time, Osman realized the guide was completely accurate. The lions ignored the vulnerable humans entirely. The fundamental difference between a lion and a human being is the complete absence of malice.
Huh.
A lion does not hunt out of spite. It doesn't hold grudges, it doesn't harbor passive-aggressive resentment, and it certainly doesn't attack you because it's having a bad day at the office.
That makes so much sense. So the pure energy of nature isn't necessarily about being peaceful, it's about absolute clarity with purpose.
Yes. Osman uses a very visceral example from the world of big game hunting to illustrate this clarity. He says if a human tourist shoots a lion and fails to get a clean kill shot, the lion's reaction is entirely different from a prey animal like a deer.
Because a deer will just bolt and run away in terror.
Exactly. But an injured lion, It will immediately turn, locate the exact source of the threat, and charge directly at the hunter.
Which is a terrifying consequence for the hunter, but it perfectly illustrates the lack of ambiguity.
Exactly. The lion operates on unbreakable, transparent rules. If it's hungry, it hunts. If it's attacked, it neutralizes the threat. There is zero chronic stress, no lingering anxiety, and absolutely no emotional baggage.
Wow.
It acts, and then it immediately returns to baseline. By understanding that absence of complex human emotion, Osman realized that even the most fearsome and dangerous parts of nature possess a pure, uncomplicated energy.
That kind of visceral clarity is such a powerful counter to human messiness. But translating the lessons of an African game drive to someone living in a cramped apartment building, that requires some serious practical adaptation.
He does.
And Osman's specific circumstances make his approach to this even more compelling because he is blind, and he explicitly states that he cannot simply wander off into the woods alone to find a hiking trail. He relies on others to navigate unfamiliar, rugged terrain.
Right, but he absolutely refuses to let that become a barrier or an excuse. His philosophy hinges on the realization that nature is constantly broadcasting, even over the mechanical din of the city.
Oh, this is the bird story, right?
Yes. He shares a story about being awake at 3 a.m. in his urban home and hearing a single bird chirping outside his window.
Yeah, in the dead of night, when the traffic and the construction finally die down, those tiny natural sounds suddenly become audible.
Exactly. And instead of rolling over and ignoring the bird or being annoyed by the disruption, he actively focused his attention on the sound. He allowed himself to really marvel at the clarity of it. And he noted that 12 hours later, while recording his thoughts for the video, he was still riding a distinct wave of contentment generated by that brief early morning interaction.
It is the ultimate example of microdosing nature. You don't need access to a sprawling national park to reset your nervous system. You just need to notice the wind howling through a corridor of skyscrapers, or, like he mentions happening in his own neighborhood, the sound of a rooster crowing in a dense urban grid.
And to systematize that connection, he advocates a highly specific daily habit.
What's the habit?
He recommends sitting in the morning sun for 15 to 20 minutes, ideally around 9:00 or 10:00 a.m.
Okay, so getting that morning light.
Right. The timing is deliberate to capture the light before the ultraviolet rays become intensely direct and pose a risk to your skin.
The physiological benefits of morning sunlight are super well documented. Getting light in your eyes early in the day regulates your circadian rhythm. It boosts cortisol in a healthy way to wake you up, and it initiates vitamin D synthesis. But his approach seems to prioritize the psychological application over the biological hacks.
That's the fascinating part. He explicitly states that during those 15 to 20 minutes in the sun, he is not meditating.
He's not.
No, he is not practicing complex breath work, and he isn't attempting any yoga postures. He is merely sitting.
I honestly find that detail incredibly relieving. Because the modern wellness industry has a terrible tendency to turn relaxation into a competitive sport, we tell ourselves that if we are taking time to sit outside, we need to be optimizing our mindfulness, or completing some 4-7-8 breathing sequence, or actively manifesting our goals to maximize the return on our time investment.
Yeah, we inadvertently drag our hyperproductive beta state right into our downtime.
Exactly.
By refusing to turn the sunlight into a task that needs to be evaluated, Osman allows himself to absorb the consistency and the warmth without demanding anything in return. It's a mechanism for resetting the nervous system that requires zero specialized equipment, no subscription fees, and no training.
Just sit there. I love it. Though sunbathing and listening to birds are universally pleasant experiences.
Sure.
The natural world, however, is frequently abrasive and can be physically oppressive. So how do we handle nature when it's uncomfortable or extreme? Applying this philosophy becomes much more difficult when the environment is actively making you miserable.
Well, Osman's ultimate proving ground for handling hostile environments occurred when he relocated to Dubai.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and his experience there introduces a really powerful psychological mechanism called cognitive reframing.
Right, because Dubai is notorious for having one of the most extreme, unforgiving climates on the planet.
He arrived in early November, which is approaching their winter season, and the ambient temperature was hovering around 33 degrees Celsius, or roughly 91 degrees Fahrenheit.
For winter, that's intense.
Yeah, and for someone entirely unaccustomed to that climate, it felt like being pan-fried. The locals found his discomfort highly amusing, warning him that when the actual summer arrived, the heat would be so intense his boots would literally fill with sweat.
What an incredibly unpleasant visual. I mean, summer temperatures in that region regularly push past 40 or even 50 degrees Celsius. We are talking 104 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. If 91 degrees felt miserable, 120 degrees should be physically intolerable and genuinely dangerous.
Exactly. But knowing he could not alter the atmospheric conditions, Osman altered the way his brain processed the sensory input. When the extreme summer heat finally hit, instead of stepping outside and bracing for a suffocating, miserable blast of hot air, he told himself something very specific. He told his brain, "This is a free sauna."
A free sauna. Labeling an oppressive weather event as a free sauna is a fascinating psychological hack because it completely changes the biological expectation.
It rewires the entire physical response. Think about the mechanics of entering a commercial sauna. People pay good money to sit in a wooden box heated to 50 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, they do.
Because they have intentionally labeled that experience as luxurious, detoxifying, and beneficial, their muscles relax, their breathing slows, and they perceive the intense sweating as a positive biological purge.
That is mind-blowing.
By consciously applying that exact same label to the Dubai weather, Osman hijacked his own nervous system's response to the heat.
He removed the brain's perception of a threat. The ambient temperature remained exactly the same, but the suffering was eliminated because his mind no longer categorized the heat as a hostile attack that needed to be fought off.
And the reframing worked so effectively that within 2 years, his body fully adapted to the environment. He eventually found himself missing the intensity of that heat when he moved away.
That's wild.
And he later applied the exact same cognitive architecture to the opposite end of the thermometer, just to prove the concept wasn't a fluke.
Oh, that Toki Snow story?
Yes. Following the pandemic, he traveled to Turkey during the winter. He found himself dealing with snow, temperatures well below freezing, and crucially, severe financial insecurity.
Oh, man.
He had barely any money to his name and no clear plan for how to sustain himself past the next 2 or 3 days.
That specific combination of extreme physical cold and acute financial terror is a textbook recipe for complete psychological collapse.
Absolutely.
The natural human instinct would be to let the internal panic dictate the external experience. Every gust of freezing wind would feel like the universe actively punishing you for being broke.
The environment would feel entirely hostile, amplifying the internal stress. But Osman intentionally focused his attention away from his panic and onto the tactile sensation of the snowflakes accumulating on the shoulders of his jacket.
Wow.
Since it was his first time experiencing snow as an adult, he focused entirely on the pure, bracing energy of the frozen environment. He allowed himself to brush the snow off and marvel at the physical reality of it.
But I think it's critical to clarify here that he wasn't using the snow to dissociate from his very real problems, right? He didn't just sit in a snowbank and wait for a financial miracle to fall from the sky.
No, not at all. He stresses in his video that he took all the necessary practical steps to secure an income and resolve his financial crisis.
Right.
The critical distinction is that he refused to let his practical problems ruin his present moment experience of the world. He notes that other people in that exact same city, living under similar financial pressures, were utterly miserable.
Yeah, the stress was consuming them.
Exactly. Reframing the snow didn't alter his bank account balance, but it radically improved the quality of the time he spent solving the problem.
Bringing all of these concepts together, I feel like Osman's framework forces us to realize that connecting with nature really isn't about geography.
It's an operational mindset.
Yes, whether you are using the relentless mathematics of a sunrise to pull yourself out of a microscopic anxiety spiral, or using a psychological reframe to turn an oppressive heat wave into a luxurious free sauna, the natural world offers a constant, steadying rhythm.
And that rhythm is always accessible to you, no matter where you live. It does not require a plane ticket, a sabbatical, or a perfectly optimized wellness routine.
Thankfully.
It simply requires a willingness to tune out the ambient high-beta anxiety of the human world and tune into the pure instinctual energy broadcasting just outside your window or through the sounds of your neighborhood at 3 in the morning.
It fundamentally comes down to where you choose to aim your attention. If noticing a single bird chirp or a gust of wind can completely reset a person's emotional state for an entire day, it begs a rather confronting question for all of us.
It really does.
What tiny synchronous background events are happening around you right now, offering a chance to calm your nervous system that you are completely ignoring because you're too busy staring at the dead pixel on your screen?